What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. I think things are looking a little gloom for Canada, but there is a silver lining because I think that when you look at Mark Carney, I think that when you look at what Mark Carney is doing, what he's continuing to do, Canada could be back at the polls in only a matter of time. What do I mean by that? We have a government sitting in office that said they were going to cut back on spending. In fact, they've done nothing but spend since they got in. You have a government running the country who said they were going to fight Donald Trump, that they were going to push back on tariffs, dollar for dollar matching tariffs. Mark Carney, during his election, pulled those tariffs off. He also has a country in disarray as multiple provinces are now seeking to break free of Canadian Confederation. All while being told that in the fall he must produce a budget to give to Canadians. I ask you, with all of that done, with all the uncertainty, with a recession now full-blown, by the way, they haven't said it's recession, but we all know it's recession. Jobs going out the window, costs rising, country in disarray. What do you think is going to happen to Mark Carney? Well, I can tell you right now there's going to be buyer's remorse when it comes to Donald Trump, because Mark Carney has done nothing to prevent Donald Trump's tariffs from entering our country. If you were around this weekend, you'll have seen an announcement that Donald Trump's tariffs are coming back on steel and aluminum. 50 and 80% on steel and aluminum. He said Friday he was doing this. What happened to elbows up? What happened to Mark Carney's going to fix our problems, right? What happened to the elbows up crowd that said, hey, we think Mark Carney has did you guys remember the interviews before the election? People in Nepean and other places saying, we think Mark Carney has the best experience to handle Donald Trump, that he's going to handle our problems and represent Canadians. Latest Trump tariffs are extinction level event for Canadian aluminum and steel. The U.S. market for 50% of our steel and 80% of our aluminum will essentially close overnight. Here, take a look at what CTV had to say about this. Keep in mind, this is the mainstream shill prostitutes of the Canadian government.
The impacts that this double tariff could have if Trump, in fact, goes ahead with it.
Yeah, well, here in Canada, you look at the amount of aluminum we produce, for example, just over 3 million tons a year, and just shy of 3 million of that is exported to the United States. You look at the amount of aluminum, steel, I should say, that is being exported to the United States. It is a very significant amount. 24, almost 25% of all steel and iron imports in the U.S. come from Canada, and at 50%, it is an enormous threshold that you are asking consumers and U.S. customers to buy, and that poses a huge challenge for Canadian producers, so much so that the the Canadian Steel Association says this is essentially it for that market.
So before we get into this comment, that's it for the market. Half of what they produce has just been shut down. What do you think is going to happen to steel and aluminum workers in Ontario, the province that voted Mark Carney in? What do you think Doug Ford's going to have to say about this? If you follow the trail of what's been going on since the election, Doug Ford, who flip-flops more than people claim I do, has come out saying, oh, now we want pipelines because it's going to use our aluminum and steel. We want to push for pipelines and all because they have no choice, because they knew this was coming. This is why they're saying we got to promote Canada. We got to push Canada. I think it's too late, too little, too late. It's a day late and a dollar short. In fact, I'm going to show you why that's not going to happen. Why it's not a solution for Canada at this point. I'm going to let this person with steel finish their point, and then I'm going to show you why things are about to get significantly worse in Canada. And keep in mind, folks, I take no pride in doing this, but it's important that Canadians know what's coming. But what's also coming is the destruction of the Liberal Party. Let's take a look.
That the U.S. market closes overnight for us. That means, in simple terms, 50% of what we produce heads to the United States. So that market will just shut instantly.
that market will just shut instantly. Those jobs are gone. What's funny is that you had Mark Carney stating he'll protect Canada's steel industry from Trump's tariffs, which will drive up the costs and lead to lost jobs, says Brian Lilly. He's defending driving up Canadian steel prices by increasing the industrial carbon tax, which will increase costs and result in lost jobs anyways. This is ridiculous. Take a listen to Mr. Here.
Well, there's a looming trade war with the United States and the industrial carbon tax in place. I'm wondering if in your plans to support Canadian industries, you would consider exempting companies from the industrial carbon tax, particularly like ones like Algoma Steel, which are actively working towards having greener technologies in place in the near future.
So what's happening is that there's a couple of things here. One is that there's a value to that industrial carbon tax and the predictability of that tax and the certainty around. It encourages the types of investments that help companies such as Algoma leapfrog their competitors, and leapfrog in many cases their American competitors, but international competitors.
Well, there's looming.
So the argument is made, and keep in mind this video clip was not from Friday. This clip was, as you can see, before the election. As Mark Carney was touting how he was going to fix everything, how he was going to handle Donald Trump. Down here, just trust him. He's an Oxford-educated economist. You wouldn't understand. Remember, Canadians don't need steel anyways. Well, it's funny that that gets brought up because as we go back, Mark Carney says he'll protect steel jobs from Trump's tariffs, but he himself has promised huge fees on our steel and our hidden carbon tax, the costs of which will be passed on to Canadians, but it's okay because we don't use steel anyway. Canada can't afford Mark Carney. That there says it, and Canada cannot afford Mark Carney. I'm going to play the clip just for context.
What we're going to do is make sure not that the government pays, not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, you know, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd? I mean...
How much steel are you using these days, Todd? Well, according to that last clip from CTV, 50%. 50%. Half of our production. And he's talking about the other half being taxed to big polluters. So if Alberta were to be granted a pipeline, which it won't, but while Doug Ford's on his high horse saying we need a pipeline because that's going to use Ontario steel, is it though? An industrial carbon tax that will bury the costs, that will make this too expensive to build, that'll pass the end result on to the consumers? As Mark says, well, it doesn't go to the consumers. It doesn't come off our taxes. It goes to the big polluters. Well, they have to pass the buck on to the consumers. This is where, if we weren't already in a recession, this tells you we're in full-blown recession. Jobs are going to disappear. The cost of living. We've already heard Loblaw report that food is set to triple over the next coming months because those tariffs are still in effect from goods that come from the US when it comes to food and clothing on certain items. I know I have to mention certain items, but I've seen people at the grocery store that are already in the expired meat areas where people are putting discounts on meat saying it expires in the next 24 to 48 hours on its best before date, take it home for 30% off. How do you think people are going to live when those costs go up? When jobs are going out the window? What do you think all of those liberal boomers who voted in for Mark Carney are going to do when their stock options fail? When their equity disappears? Because nobody can afford anything. All those people doing their elbows up dance. Now keep in mind I said liberal boomers. We had many boomers who voted for Pierre Poilievre, who voted for change. We have many boomers who are standing up to say enough is enough. This country has caused enough damage. We're out. You guys remember the video clip of everybody doing the elbows up chicken dance outside of the voting polls? Oh, we're all voting for Mark Carney, the Brantford boomer giving the finger to everybody. What do you think they're going to be thinking? when all these jobs go out the window, when they were publicly exposed during the election, by the way? What do you think people are going to be saying to them? Let's take a look at what the articles are telling us. Trump's new steel tariffs will cause mass disruption, Canadian industry warns. Well, of course it will. Donald Trump's heightened tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the country will create mass disruption and negative consequences. Trump said on Friday he will double the tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to 50%. Catherine Cobden, president and CEO of Canadian Steel Producers Association, said the steel industry in Canada and the U.S. were highly integrated and tariffs would hit steel producers on both sides. Steel tariffs at this level will create mass disruption and negative consequences across our highly integrated steel supply chains and customers on both sides of the border, they said in a statement on Saturday. Well, the reason Trump wants this is because he wants to push more production in the USA. The USA builds for USA. The USA looks after USA. USA first, USA only. The difference in Canada is Mark Carney is saying, let's open up our economic powers. But by the way, I'm going to put an industrial carbon tax on everything that goes out to do that so that people really don't get ahead anyways. This guy's in a net zero fantasy. Anytime you hear the words net zero, boot them out the door. The tariff increase will take effect Wednesday, Trump said in a Truth Social post shortly after he announced the new rate of steel imports at the rally with steelworkers in Pennsylvania. Our steel and aluminum industries are coming back like never before. This will be done. Yet another big jolt of great news for our wonderful steel and aluminum workers, Trump wrote. Cobden said the move essentially closes the U.S. market to our domestic industry for half of its production. It's vital that the government of Canada responds immediately to fully reinstate retaliatory steel tariffs to match the American tariffs and to implement as quickly as possible new tariffs at our own borders to stop unfairly traded steel from entering Canada, she said. She said a trade war between Canada and the U.S. would have unrecoverable consequences on the North American steel industry. It'll also have unrecoverable consequences on other industries. It's not just steel. Keep in mind, Mark Carney went to the White House and he sat in the Oval Office and a reporter asked Donald Trump, with Mark Carney sitting here and we're talking about, benefiting both countries and we're talking about working together, is there anything that he could say that would get you to pull back on the tariffs? No. Why not? It's just not in the cards. That's exactly what Trump said. It's just the way it is. It is what it is. You guys remember that? Mark Carney got spanked. And while he sat there trying to interject and letting Trump speak, many people in Ontario, because the papers were rampant with it, all the people who voted Mark Carney, oh, he did such a great job with Donald Trump. He actually defended Canadians. Oh, he did exactly what he said he was going to do. How about now? How about now? Where's Mike Myers? Will there always be a Canada? No, it's been destroyed. It's already been destroyed 3 months since Mark Carney showed his face around government. I know he's only been prime minister for roughly 6 weeks, but this is abysmal when it comes to Canada. The new government has already consulted on possible new measures. The time for the Canadian government to act is now, she said. Trump announced the increased duties on steel during a rally in U.S. Steel's Mon Valley Works, Irvin plant in Pittsburgh Friday evening, where he criticized countries for dumping their garbage steel products into the U.S. at a lower cost. We're going to bring it from 25% to 50% on the tariffs of steel in the United States of America, which will even further secure the steel industry in the United States, Trump told the crowd. Nobody is going to get around that. In March, Trump put 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to the United States. And again, how's that worked out so far? The president has said his sweeping tariffs will bring manufacturing back to the United States. Look, Donald Trump is not the cause of Canada's dismay. While I'm not a fan of the tariffs, if the man is trying to make sure that things are done within the USA, build within the USA, do you guys remember back in, well, maybe some people won't, but if you look back in the history books, buy American, right? Buy a Ford. Don't buy Japanese cars. Buy American. Let's promote American. That's what Donald Trump is doing here. He's looking after his country. He's trying to reduce taxes and encourage spending within America for businesses to build using American products. He's trying to get away from China. And all of this goes back to issues within Panama, when it comes to shipping, when it comes to China. It can all be traced back if you use the money. The guy's looking out for his country. It's a shame in this country, in Canada, we don't have a government that's willing to do the same. Instead, we have a government who ignores the dismay of other provinces, that is allowing them to crumble, talking about leaving Confederation, without even acknowledging it, by the way. He's hoping that if he sticks his head in the sand, it just goes away. You have a prime minister who's more focused on spending, on talking about net zero, a fantasy realm, rather than dealing with reality. We have a prime minister who doesn't care whether or not you can turn on your lights or put food in your fridge. He cares about his bottom line. The government, I've said for a long time, is nothing more than the new organized crime racket. It's a new mob, a new mafia, and this shows you their complete lack and disregard for the Canadian public by not tackling the major problem at heart here. Taxation. Taking our tax dollars to funnel their lifestyles. Mark Carney has cost thousands of families, if not hundreds of thousands of families, their jobs at this point. I don't like to report on doom and gloom. I really don't. I would rather come out with positive stories, happy stories. I do try to find them, folks. But I wouldn't be doing my due diligence to you on this platform if I didn't at least tell you, now's the time to batten down the hatches, buckle up. Things are about to get significantly worse. Banks have already stated they're not going to be issuing credit to those who could have got it months ago. People, I really don't know how are going to survive the next 6 to 12 months or thereafter. I think things are going to get far worse before they get better. The silver lining, if you want to talk positivity, is that all of this will snowball. And all of this, hopefully by fall, as early as fall, when a budget is tabled, is so alarming that people like Crystia Freeland, who left because she couldn't announce Justin Trudeau's abysmal budget last year, last year's budget. Hopefully it's that bad in the fall that it begs the question of, why is Mark Carney here? Why are we even tolerating this? Hopefully by then Pierre's got his seat from his by-election. Hopefully we could be back at the polls. Maybe people have woken up a little bit. Because regardless of what provinces do when it comes to independence, there's still a country to run. And the rest of Canada deserves a prominent leader that's actually going to put a stop to this, that's actually going to make your lives better, or at least try. There's no easy solution to this. There's no overnight solution. Things are going to be hard moving forward regardless. But I personally would rather them be more difficult on the promise that things are going to be better rather than being told to just shut up and pay. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. It's your first time here. I hope this video has earned your subscription. As you're hitting that button, please turn on your bell for all notifications so that you don't miss a beat whenever videos drop on this channel. Even if you've hit those notifications, I'm being told that people aren't being notified when our videos are dropping. Make sure to check back on the channel daily. We always have new content dropping here. I don't think I've missed a day in a while without uploading some form of content. So always check back frequently. Join me live here on the channel each and every Friday for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show, where I'm joined by the beautiful Mrs. Fringe as we go back and forth to talk about everything that happened this week in politics, everything we know coming up in the week ahead, as well as your Q&A and back and forth within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to chatting with you guys each and every week to hear what you have to say, but I most importantly look forward to chatting with you this Friday night, starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.